Hello, and welcome to the platform for the Labour Party of Canada. Number one, I'm going to work out our issues with the United States. If you want to focus on green and trade, and they've always been our largest and closest trading partner, Canada and the US should be doing business without issue with one another. And if that means we protect our border to keep illegals and drugs from flowing into the US from Canada, we should do that. If we have to start buying more goods from other countries, such as European countries, or as far away as China, way over here, across an ocean to Canada, when we can buy and sell goods right here and get everything we need. We should have much more business in Canada, and there's a few things that we can do to make that happen. That means shaking hands, putting aside our differences with the US, and focusing on our strengths and our close history with one another. It is far easier to manufacture something in Ontario, put it on a truck, take it down into the US, grab something from Oklahoma, and bring it back into Canada. The other alternative is, if you go elsewhere in the world, you load something on a truck, you take it to a port at either end of the country, you ship it across the ocean on a freighter, into another port, onto another truck, into another warehouse, distributed onto another truck, and out into the stores. We can do that all right here without the port, without the freighters. It would be much easier to keep things within North America and trade with the US. Economically, that makes perfect sense, because if you start shipping things on freighters, shipping costs go through the roof. And everything you buy and sell to someone else costs way more than it should. Point number two, and a very important point, is opening the Northwest Passage. The reason for doing that, if you look at maritime traffic, it is busy. If you look at the cost to get through the Panama Canal, it's $300,000 per large vessel. That could be a freighter, a cruise ship, and that's an excessive cost that we could compete with quite easily. Again, maritime traffic, zoom in just a little bit. If you look at the Panama Canal, they are down to 15 vessels a day, which is not very good. They come to our west coast, so Vancouver, Delta. The east coast, we have St. John, North Sydney, Nova Scotia, St. John's, Newfoundland, and the many ports on the east coast in the US. But again, this is a lot of traffic. What happens in some cases, there are ports along Mexico. The goods are then put on trucks, trucked across Mexico and the lower US, put on another freighter, and makes their way across the ocean out into other nations. If we go north a little bit, there's the Northwest Passage. Since there would be far more than 15 vessels a day, as the Panama Canal used to traverse 50 vessels a day through the canal, more would like to, but the capabilities aren't there. We have that ability, and there's a few ways to make it happen. One is, obviously, with icebreakers, and we'll get to how we're going to pay for them in just a minute. In through the Labrador Sea, Davis Strait, through Baffin Bay, up past Resolute, and out through into the Beaufort Sea. And let's be honest here, it wouldn't just be Canadian goods and American goods to travel through. Along the way, we would obviously have to set up a few bases for search and rescue. A couple of military bases wouldn't be such a bad idea if the need arose. And by opening this passage, as far as I see it and as far as we are concerned, as long as they are paying the fee, the Northwest Passage would be open to any vessel that would like to cross through. Our job would simply be to keep the passage open, maintain its safety, bust through the ice to allow them to pass, do some inspections, obviously, the seaworthiness of the ship, and we would be inspecting the goods as well, because they are crossing through Canadian waters. If you do the math, it adds up pretty quick with the Panama Canal at $300,000 per crossing. And we were conservative about 25 ships per day that crossed through. That's $7.5 million per day. That's $1 billion every 133 days, or roughly $3 billion a year. That's a very conservative estimate. Now let's talk about how we're going to pay for that. The first thing I would do is cut all funding to media and radio in Canada. The CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, the National Film Board of Canada, NFB, and the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, CRTC, I would defund them all. To add to this, that would include all local radio stations as well. A lot of people don't know this. 40% of their revenue is paid for by tax dollars. If you drive 30 minutes to work, that's 1 hour a day, 5 hours a week, and you will listen to the same 10 songs again and again and again until something new arrives, along with a healthy mixture of ads. There are other options available. Satellite radio, you can download stuff off of YouTube, turn it into an MP3, put it in a USB drive, and plug it into your radio. I do that. There's Spotify, SoundCloud, and many, many other options that would cost you significantly less than you are currently paying now. The CBC alone received $1.24 billion in 2022 and $1.4 billion in 2021. That will buy some icebreakers. It will set up some infrastructure for search and rescue and open up the Northwest Passage. There is also one more thing I would like to touch on. I would sell off Canada Post. At one point in time, they were the only option. It made perfect sense to fund them to deliver Canadian mail from one end of this country to the other. There are now other options. Canada Post would still be an option. It would just be run and managed by someone else. A private service. Canadian tax dollars don't need to go toward this. Their current asset value is $13.3 billion in 2024. They are operating at a $1 billion a year loss. That difference of $1 billion is paid for by you. Just in Canada Post loss from 1 year and the CBC, that is $2.4 billion. When you add up the rest of it, that would help us a lot and allow us to take a look at a new revenue stream, such as the Northwest Passage. Some changes to the trucking industry. Canadian trucks are a lot heavier than they are in the US. A lot of people think 80,000 pounds is our maximum weight. That is only 36 ton. Our trucks are up to 63 ton. They're carrying twice as much as US trucks are. And I'm going to make a longer video explaining a whole lot of stuff about the trucking industry that the public may or may not know, but some serious changes need to be made. And as we've seen, the government refuses to talk to truck drivers to sort these problems out with the drivers and the companies that own those trucks. Another is that I would make sure that the roads are open 24/7 across Canada. With the exception of high winds and blinding snow, that actually is very possible. We've seen it in some areas, whereas Southern Ontario, if the plowing companies don't do the job, they pay big fines. In a lot of places across Canada, they're too late to get out on the road to plow snow. Cars get stuck. That reduces time and efficiency as well as safety. Or they go home at 10, 11 o'clock at night and they don't start back up until 7 a.m. When they do that, they throw a little salt down on the highway, they come back in the morning, and that turns to just black ice. We end up with big pileups. Trucks can't get through. It's very inefficient. It has no need to be the way it is. As far as I'm concerned, the plowing companies can either do the job or let us know that they can't do the job, and we will find someone else who can and will. They claim profits and so on and such, when the fact of the matter is, yes, if you don't do the job and you get paid based on a contract for the year, it is a more profitable way of doing things, but it is a huge hindrance to people getting to work, trucks hauling goods, school buses in the morning picking up kids for school, and there is absolutely no need of it. And just because it's the weekend does not mean that they get the weekend off as well. People go shopping. They are still going to work. It is not 1980 anymore. It is 2025. There are businesses that are open 24/7. There are factories, manufacturers, there are drivers going to and from work, hauling goods, and need those roads open. I will ensure that they stay open. Another is that Canada should find new trading partners for goods, and I'm not saying that we should shut off the US. We should be supplying the US with everything that they want. We should also be supplying anybody else that would like to buy our goods with those goods. Japan and Germany showed up in Canada in 2023. Both of them said, we would like Canadian natural gas and oil. They were told to go away by the government because it wasn't green enough. So what happened is they went somewhere else to get the goods they wanted, and the industry didn't come to Canada when it should have. They came here first to invest in our infrastructure, to bring jobs, to bring revenue to Canada because, one, they were a little bit desperate, and two, they like the way Canada operates and would love to work with us because we do have some very, I'm not sure how to put this, but our crude oil is easier to refine than anywhere else. Our natural gas is abundant and burning it is not dirty. It's the next thing to as clean as you can get apart from nuclear power. We just seen Japan, still seeking out natural gas, just made a $1 trillion deal with the US. That was our deal 2 years ago, and they were told no. That's extremely embarrassing as far as I'm concerned. That should not have happened. The next point on the list is eliminating the carbon tax. In the video that I'm going to make about trucking, I will show you how we can do it more efficiently. We can haul more goods, have more experience in the trucks. We can move more weight on less fuel. Therefore, there's less need for any kind of a carbon tax because simply throwing money at the problem will not fix the problem. By collecting the carbon tax through everything that you buy, applying it to trucking, and then giving you back a couple $100 a year does not fix the problems when that $200 does not account for how much more you've paid unnecessarily. Because if you raise the cost of shipping and fuel costs, you are still paying significantly more than you need to be. I will eliminate the carbon tax and many other taxes as well. With the opening of the Northwest Passage and icebreakers being in the area of Hudson Bay, we could open up Churchill, Manitoba a little bit and put pipelines from Fort McMurray, Alberta into Churchill, Manitoba. It's about 1,000 kilometers, 1,050 kilometers. If we were to put crude oil and natural gas pipelines out to Churchill, Manitoba, that would seriously open up trade for Canadian natural gas and oil. And the next point, eliminate all fuel taxes in Canada on gasoline and diesel fuel. And with the other changes that I intend to make, we would not need them. And the next one is increase mental health services. If somebody has an addictive personality and they put it toward running or a hobby, they can end up starting a business out of it and they can succeed with it. They can also get themselves into drugs and alcohol to try to bury something that happened during their childhood or something traumatic that happened later on in life. Your brain controls everything that happens to your body. So if you are stressed, you are going to get sick. Your immune system doesn't work as well as it should. I would include therapy and psychological services into public health care. It would be through your doctor. It would not just be that you go to a therapist and build a system. Your doctor would prescribe it. Doctor-patient confidentiality would obviously still be in place. But if you were to tell your doctor, I have been feeling really good lately, this bad thing's been going on, I'm having trouble at work, I have found myself using more alcohol and drugs, your doctor could prescribe a little therapy to help you through that, and you go see a therapist, and that would be covered, because a lot of the problems we are seeing today are mental health issues that are not being taken care of. Also with that is one phone number as the suicide hotline in Canada. That would include calling and texting. The next point, lengthen sentences for violent offenders. That would include a minimum for sex offenders to 10 years on a first offense, conviction, not charges. Institute mandatory minimum sentence for all violent crimes, and a second offense is life without parole. When it comes to the sexual abuse of minors, we all know that those people, most of the time, and we've all seen it, they may spend a very short period of time in jail. They are let out into the community, and they always reoffend. If they're removed from society after a second offense, or even the fear of being completely removed from society may give them a second thought about committing that crime. And a very important one that we now have at the forefront of our news, we need to make some serious changes to our drug policies. The way I would go about it is life for the manufacturers. When they break down the door, whoever's standing inside of that lab is going to jail for life. That's the minimum. That's what it is. You're not getting yourself out of it. Minimum sentences for dealers. Now, that does not mean life, but they will serve a minimum sentence. And as for just users, you're not dealing it, you're not making it. No questions asked. You can dial 911, get a ride to the hospital where you will be taken care of and rehabilitated. No cost to you, no questions asked. You can get yourself to the hospital, or you can have a police officer take you to the hospital. We've too often demonized a user when we tend not to look at what the cause is. And this again goes back into mental health. If we deal with the mental health issues at the hospital, get them off of that addiction, get them off of those drugs, those people can once again be functioning members of society, and it will be better for everybody around them. Because as I've said before, there is absolutely no reason why we should abandon people and just leave them on the street in a Canadian winter. Because one, it is far too cold, and two, also, it is too hot in the Canadian summer now. I would eliminate daylight savings across Canada. Once it comes to summer, we would just leave it as it is, and that would be the way it is all year round. It would not bother trade or schedules in any way. There used to be a point to it to keep the train schedule going, but now there's no need of it. And there would no longer be any negative effects from eliminating daylight savings. So we get into banning windmills. They're all across Canada, and they're at the point now they're being torn down. They did not produce more power than what was required to put them up. They're an eyesore. People don't like them anymore. There's hundreds of thousands of birds are killed every year because of windmills, so we're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. When it comes to welfare, social assistance, for the most part, it's people that just don't want to work that are on it. In some cases, in certain provinces, it pays more than disability, so people choose to be on social assistance rather than disability because of that. I would limit welfare to 2 years. If it is something where you should be on disability, you will be on it for 2 years, and then you will be on disability. Now, one that is a little bit controversial, if somebody is over the age of 18 and they want to change out their parts and the way they look and who they identify as, nobody really cares about that. If you're over 18, you've made that choice. There's a psychiatric review that you have to go through in Canada. That's no problem. That wouldn't be changed at all. If somebody is under the age of 18, we really need to look at the doctors and parents involved in that. Somebody who is 3 years old, who was born a boy, is becoming a girl, that is somebody who is under the care of a mother or father who has severe psychiatric issues. The doctor that would perform such a surgery and be involved in such a thing should not be a doctor and should probably be jailed, in my opinion. But for the most part, if somebody is under 18, there's no transgender services available to you. And that is just the way that is. Over 18, nobody cares. You do whatever you want. That's up to you. You're making your own decisions. That's fine. The next up on the list, large bills that have dramatic effects across Canada and affect all Canadians in big ways. Those bills should be voted on by the public. So what you do is you put them up online. People can discuss them. Allow 6 months for conversation around them. Don't try to hide anything in them. And they must achieve 80% approval by the voters to be approved. That type of stuff should be up for public review and vote. Next up is aiming to reduce capital gains tax to 25% in Canada. Upping it from 50% to 66% is just silly. That is telling every business in Canada to go somewhere else. They're going to move somewhere else where they can make more money. You're just stifling economic achievements at that point. because somebody who has nothing and has grown a business from the ground up and is making millions of dollars a year, if you have to give half of it or 2/3 of your profits to the government, you're going to move that business. And one more before we get into the main promise. I would cut off all foreign aid and immigration. We need to take care of Canadians first and be in a better position so that we can happily host immigrants from around the world. I personally don't care where somebody was born. I don't care what color they are. It doesn't matter to me. If they were born into poverty and they're eyeing up Canada to achieve a better life, that's great. That's fantastic. But we've been bringing people into Canada. We cannot house them. We have seen recently where 90% of the use of some food banks is immigrants. We're not able to house them properly. We're not bringing them into Canada and showing them our way of life as they want it. We are bringing them into Canada where they just get to live in overcrowded houses or simply on the street, or out of necessity, they turn to crime. I'm not against immigration. I've known many immigrants over the years. I've worked alongside many immigrants over the years, and I've had a fantastic time with pretty much all of them. But until we have enough houses here, we shouldn't be bringing anyone in. As for sending money overseas, most of it gets shoved in a dictator's pocket. A lot of it is wasted in the form of red tape and stupidity, and we're just throwing money into the air, where we can do so much more if we take care of some of our issues first and actually give aid to where it needs to go. If an area needs food, we should be sending food, not money. Once we are in a better position to help, we will once again open up immigration. But until we are in a much better position to help others, I would shut all of that off. And last, certainly not least, and here's one thing, I don't know why it's not being done now. If a prime minister is elected after 4 years, if they have not achieved at least 75% of the promises they made during their campaign, if they have not stuck with their platform, they should not be paid, and they should be exiled from Canada. I am willing to make that deal with you. If I don't accomplish anything in 4 years, or at least 75% of the promises I made, you can boot me out of this country, and there's no cost to you for doing it. That's the end of the promises, the end of my platform, and I look forward to working for you after the next election. Have a good one, everybody.